In this video, we're going to talk about namespaces. Namespaces are an easy way to split up your code into manageable chunks without having to create like a new TCP connection for each. It might be easier to think of them as endpoints, as it is somewhat similar to how REST APIs use different endpoints and controllers to separate code into logical blocks or modules. To demonstrate how to use namespaces and assign those namespaces to gateways, we're going to create two namespaces. One for the basic chat app we created in the previous videos, and a new one, an alerts gateway, which is going to be used to send alert to those users. So no more talking, let's dive right in. In the previous video, I showed you a lot of options, but we're going to get rid of that so we can just focus on what's important. So let's do some cleanup. Let's start by getting rid of our gateway that we created. Just delete it completely, and we'll also empty the module here so that it's just an empty module. Yep, looks good. Now let's go to main.ts. That looks good. Index.html. Let's make some changes. Let's get rid of all this customization we did. Just leave it at the default. Don't need this title. That was just me showing you an example of view reactivity. Let's see. Yep, take that out. Let's take out these example messages, and we're going to have two sockets this time, one for chat and one for alerts. So let's just make that an object. And then to be more explicit, I'm going to say send chat message and receive chat message, because we're also going to have alerts. Let's make sure we do that on the chat socket and change the event to chat to server and chat to client to be more specific. That looks good. Change it back to the default port, get rid of the path. Again, let's change that to chat to client and receive chat message. Now, is that all we need? Let's look through here. Oh, no, missed this. So we're going to kind of replicate the existing chat app that we had, but we're going to put it into its own namespace, and then we're going to have another separate namespace for alerts so that we can have one socket client dealing with, handling those alerts that are received from the server, and we're going to have one socket here dedicated to receiving and sending any chat messages, right? So we've kind of pared it down and got rid of some of those options from the previous video. Before we move on and start handling the back end and developing the front end app here more, let's just take a quick review. So we have a template up here at the top, right? Let's see, we've got an input where we can send our text messages. You can see here that whenever on that input we send chat message, and this time since we have separate sockets, we're going to send on this .socket.chat.emit. So right, you're going to have to add that in so we're accessing that part of the object since we have two sockets now on the client side. We just changed that to chat to server since we're going to have another namespace just to be very clear for training purposes. And on created, look, before what we did is we just did this .socket. And then we said, hey, on this, we're going to handle the event and receive that chat message and throw it up into the array here. And there's this v-for loop looping through to show our messages. So what's the first thing we probably need to work on? I hope you said that we need to change this to the correct namespace. So if you said that, good on you. We're going to say this .socket.chat equals, and then how do we tell it about a specific namespace? Well, that's quite simple. We just put a / and put the namespace name. So we can say chat, right? Now don't get this confused, because when we think path, we think, oh, well, the chat here, that's the path. No, path is what you'd put into an options object, right? But again, it's kind of confusing. If it's a namespace, you put it into the path like this to access it. So we've got that. Let's change this to this .socket chat.on chat to client, receive chat message. So yeah, so we're going to receive, we're going to set up that socket right here. We're going to set it for that namespace, and then when we receive this, yep, we should be all good to go. This one, yep, chat to server, yep, we're good to go for now. So why don't we, since we deleted our gateways, go and create that chat gateway now? Let's create our gateway by issuing the NestCLI command. And then let's check the module. Yep, it loaded what we needed, as you can see there. So then let's actually go, we'll delete the spec file we're not going to test. And then we look in the gateway. Yep, let's clean this up how we want it. So we'll make this chat to server. Make sure we import from socket.io. And then we know the message. This time we're going to make it an object. We're going to have a sender, so we'll know who sent it. And then we'll have the message text. We're not going to return anything, so we'll make that void. And let's just comment this out for now, because we'll need to bring in the server. But first, let's make a logger. We'll put that into the on init. Logger equals new logger, chat gateway. And we're going to implement on gateway init. Let's implement that. Let's move it down here. And then we'll just log that that it's initialized. Okay, let's bring in the WebSocket server. So whenever we use this, it just throws in the reference to the server once it's initialized. Again, make sure you're importing from socket.io. And now let's say this.wss.emit chat to client, and then we're going to pass that message. If I can spell right. Looks good. Okay, so let's go to index, and now we're going to pass an object now, not just text, so we'll have to make some changes accordingly. Let's just make the name in bold, keep this simple. So then we'll have to access, sender and the message. Now, how will we know who the sender is? Well, we're going to have to first fix this object. We're going to put that into the message. And then just as we're expecting on the backside, we'll have a sender, and we'll pass it this.username, which isn't created yet, but we're going to do that right now. So let's make it, let's say username. And again, to keep the implementation really simple for this, we're just going to prompt the user when you load the page to enter a username. Okay, that will probably get us started, I think. Let's do a quick check in the gateway. Sure enough, what's the one thing I missed to actually make a namespace? Why don't we put that in, since this video is on namespaces. Put chat, and with that, I think we're good to go. So at this point, we just need to run the server, make sure it initializes, and it does, as you can see right here. So now let's go look at the front end. Okay, let's open up our dev tools so we can monitor the WebSockets. Let's clear this error. It's probably just Google. So let's enter the name that it's prompting us for, and then let's pull up WebSockets and type in a hey. And yep, looks good. If you can see over there on the right, we have the chat to server and the chat to client. We're receiving a Bob hey. So we are at the point now where we can start actually working on the alternate gateway that's going to run side by side with this one for the alerts. I want to split the columns to have two columns on the web page and have alerts on the right and chat on the left. So I'm going to make some section tags to make it easier to grid this off. So one for alerts and one for chat. Let's move this into the chat area. And then let's make an alerts array to hold the alerts, and then let's make a receive alert message that will just simply push the message into that alerts array. Next, we'll come down and we'll initialize this socket. So it's going to be pretty much just like the chat with a few differences. So this.socket.alert equals IO, It's going to be just like up here, except we're just going to change that namespace. Instead of chat, we're going to put in alert. Same thing for the own. Let's just copy this because it's so similar. Change that to this.socket.alerts. Make this alert to client instead of chat to client. And then we want to call the receive alert message. Now let's make a quick little CSS just to divide this to 2 columns on a grid. I'm just going to paste in the CSS. So we've got a main with a display of grid. We've got 2 columns, and their columns are named chat and alerts. And then down here, all we're doing is just assigning that chat to chat, alerts to alerts. There we go. And that's it. So let's go back to our index. And now we need to add in something to display the alerts. So I'm just going to, well, actually, first put in the style sheet. And then let me paste in the notification. So this is just going to make it look pretty. So when we have some alerts, there's some CSS there, making it a little bit stylish. Because I'm terrible at CSS, it's much easier for me to just paste in a nice little tool like this. So we will need to register this. So we're going to call it alerts component will be the tag name. And then if you don't know what I'm doing here, just copy and paste it. This is view stuff. This isn't really necessary for you to learn WebSockets. This is just to display it nicely. So let's add that tag in. Alerts component, just like we have down there in the view.component. And when the items prop is going to hold that alerts array, and that's it. Let's scroll down. And yeah, I think the only thing left to do now is, oh no, wait, I gotta fix that. Yes, yeah. Now all we have to do next is actually create that alert gateway. So why don't we focus on that now? So let's start by using the CLI to generate the alert gateway. Let's check the module. Yep, it's there. So let's also generate a controller, which we'll use to create an alert. We just hit an endpoint to create one when we want it. So let's delete these spec files. And then let's take a look at that gateway. Okay, so first let's namespace it. Let's get a reference to our WebSocket server. Let's you know what, let's just get rid of this. We don't need this. Let's make a method called sendToAll. We're just going to pass in a string, and then we're just going to emit the alert to client event on the WebSocket server. We're going to pass in an object that says type alert, and the message, it will be the message that we passed in. Let me change that variable name. Okay, let's clean this up. Now let's take a look at that controller. So we just need a single method, which is going to, actually, you know what, first let's bring in this gateway. So let's inject this. And then let's do our one and only method, which is going to be a post. We only need the 200. We're not creating anything, so let's specify that because I'm anal about stuff like that. And then we're going to call send alert to all. We're just going to have in the body one message passed, and then we're just going to turn around and pass that to that method we created on the gateway. There we go. And then let's just return the DTO. Okay, so at this point, I think we're ready to test out what we've made. Let's do that now. To start, I've got a browser open with 2 tabs. Let's pull up localhost in the first tab. Let's call this Bob. And let's do the same except for let's make a John. How about that? John says, hey. And then let's go check, make sure we see it on the first one. We do. Now let's have Bob say hello. And we have it. Good. So we have the chat over here, but what about the alerts that should be over here? So for that, let's go to my Insomnia HTTP client. It's kind of like Postman, but natively supports GraphQL queries, so I like it better. I use it a bit. The endpoint that we're going to hit is the localhost 3000/alert. When we send that, we're going to pass in message, and whatever we pass in here, we should see alert pop up. And we should also get that DTO back. So let's send it. And we see it pop up. Do we see it on Bob's? We do. Good deal. So if we send another message, we should also see that pop up. And we do. And what about Bob? And we do. So it looks like we're good. At this point, we're actually done. So let's just do a quick recap, and then we'll talk about the future video. In this video, we split our WebSockets code into different gateways with different namespaces. This helps us on the server side to better organize our code, and on the client side, it allows us to choose to only connect to those namespaces that we actually need. In the next video, we'll take a look at rooms. Rooms are similar to namespaces insofar as conceptually they allow us to compartmentalize things. However, when we look at the implementation, there are a few significant differences between the two that we need to discuss. We'll take a deeper dive into this in the next video and hopefully clear up any confusion that you may have.